Today we're finally releasing the compensator for the Springfield Echelon. It's been a long time coming, and with that we want to talk about why people are buying the Springfield Echelon. We feel like we've shot it enough to be able to talk about it. Done a lot of testing with this compensator and many prototypes in the past. And to start off, let's go over this build. On top we have a Holosun 508T. We've used this dot a lot in the past. One thing I like a lot about the Echelon is the optics mounting solution. There's no need for adapter plates. You can simply change out a couple pins and put pretty much any optic on here. With this system, it's just one less thing you have to deal with and one less thing you have to worry about. I like it a lot. I think it's super innovative. So good on Springfield for that one. They did a really good job on the slide in general. They really tried to make the slide cuts functional. You can see in the front, they have grooves for press checks. And on the back, they have these wings you can grab really easy. Just seems like a lot of thought went into the slide. It wasn't just a decorative cut they threw on there. They are pretty aggressive. They work very well. Honestly, they feel a lot like the Walther PDP when you do have to manipulate the slide. They're not so rough that it's uncomfortable, but they're kind of riding that ragged edge of the sweet spot. Aggressive enough they're useful, especially in wet conditions. Not too aggressive that it will actually hurt you. With this slide, we have the U-notch rear sight. They also have a 3-dot sight. It's really nice they're offering more versions than a lot of other companies. You'll see we'll just have one sight. The U-notch is very polarizing to a lot of people, so it's nice that you can get a 3-dot if you want. For me, I throw an optic on pretty much everything I can, so it didn't even matter. I will say before we put an optic on this, we did a lot of testing with just the iron sights, and they work very well. I liked them a lot. The yellow front sight was very easy to pick up in low light or very bright conditions. I will have to say I really like the U-notch rear sight. It looked really good. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have gotten the 3-dot. I've shot a lot of guns with 3-dot sights, and it's nice to try something different. And I like this a lot. One thing that's a really weird side note about the Echelon is it has a really smooth slide. Both the spring feels very positive. It doesn't feel like there's any binding. And then the rail system is really smooth on here as well. Like I said, we have about 1,000 rounds on this gun. I don't think I've lubed it at all since we started, and for some reason it feels really smooth. So that's kind of a nice little side benefit of this gun. We do have the Surefire X300 turbo on here. We've done testing with this in the past. I like this light a lot. I think it's really heavy and it's really big. That's why I typically choose the TLR1 over the Surefire. So with this longer slide, we opted for a longer weapon light that fits basically flush with the compensator. Kind of helps bring balance to this overall build. And of course, the turbo is a great weapon light. We've actually did a video comparing a lot of different weapon lights, and this one was a pretty good option. I'm really excited for the day Springfield releases a compact Echelon. Especially with this FCU system, I'd be wondering if we could put a compact slide with a nested compensator in this full-size frame. Springfield, if you're working on that, hit us up. We want to play with it. We are running a threaded barrel from Springfield in here. What I find interesting is it's a longer threaded barrel, something like you'd see with the 320s. A lot of manufacturers opt for a shorter length sticking out of the slide. I wish Springfield would have done that here. It's a little bit longer. Of course, the comp has to compensate for that. Unfortunately, what that does is it makes us have to use a very long comp to account for the barrel length. When you look at this barrel, it stops right at the face of the port. So unfortunately, when we're making compensators, we have to account for that. And it's just kind of a long setup. Springfield, if you're watching this and you are working on a compact setup, I would go with a shorter barrel length. Most suppressors can run that just fine, and it helps us make an overall shorter compensator, which we really appreciate. We're gonna way down this build. It's not really something we added on. It is just the frame itself. It has a really nice built-in little thumb rest here. It both sticks off the frame and swells out. It's just a really nice spot for your support thumb to kind of rest on there and help you fight some of that recoil. So it's really nice to see a manufacturer both stipple this and intentionally think about where your support hand is going to be and really help you fight that recoil. I'm sure in the future Align Tactical or some of the other brands are going to come out with a thumb rest for this. But for now, I think it's just really nice that OEM decided to put that on there. And what you'll see is this gun is rather ambidextrous. It is also on the opposite side for lefties. One thing I did notice is this slide release is rather small, but it's not hard to hit. We did quite a few reloads with this, and I had no issue hitting the slide release. I also found that I didn't ride it when shooting. With these lower bore axis guns, I find myself riding the slide release quite a lot and not allowing the slide to lock all the way back on an empty mag. We did not have that issue with the Springfield, so that made me really happy. One of my big complaints with Glock is a stock slide release. I ride it all the time when shooting, and I don't get slide lock. So it was nice to see that with the Echelon. The trigger is pretty nice on the Echelon. It's very smooth. There's not too much take up. It's a light spring, so you don't really notice it too much. The brake is a heavier rolling brake, but it's super smooth. It feels buttery smooth. The reset leaves a little bit to be desired. It's not very tactile or audible, but it does push your finger forward really nicely. I can shoot this gun pretty fast, and I think a lot of that has to do with the trigger and its reset. The length of pull was pretty much perfect. This gun pulls a lot of aspects from a 320 and a Glock. This is just a really nice middle ground on a lot of features. And in my opinion, the Echelon might be the new staple, but to me, it's just infinitely better than a lot of striker fired triggers on the market. When you look at the Glock trigger, it is a very long break that is rather squishy. The Echelon just feels a lot more refined. It's shorter, it's smoother, doesn't feel squishy at all. I do like this trigger quite a lot. The mag release is also really good. It's very positive. I think it helps that Springfield uses steel mags, which is really good. It's also ambidextrous. As I said, this gun seems to be very ambidextrous. When we first got this gun, the mag release had a little bit of binding feeling. If you took your time with the mag release and you pushed it in slow, you could kind of feel things moving. Now, after a lot of mag changes, it feels very smooth. So that is a good thing. It does have an interchangeable backstrap, which is also really nice, and it's kind of impressive they could pull it off. This really fine grip texture, it looks pretty seamless. You really can't see where the backstrap is. Just adds a lot more versatility to this gun. This grip texture goes around the entire frame. It's not too aggressive that I would feel uncomfortable carrying, but it's aggressive enough that it definitely is noticeable when you're shooting. If you get sweaty hands or things get wet, I don't think you would have any issue holding onto this gun. It's kind of like a fine sandpaper. So I can say I like it a lot. One thing to note about the ergonomics of this gun is it leaves a little bit to be desired in my opinion. It's very smooth, it's very rounded. I do notice a couple hot spots. With this backstrap, it does have a very large palm swell, which I feel digging into my palm. And then my knuckle hits right here on the frame. It digs in pretty aggressively. Those are the only two things I really don't like about the ergos on this frame. Other than that, it is infinitely better than a stock Glock 19. So we're kind of being picky here. That's what these videos are about. I am nitpicking these guns, things I like, things I don't like. The ergonomics are definitely not a deal breaker for me. Frankly, they're rather comfortable comparing them to a lot of other guns on the market, but I do have two hot spots that I had to mention. And other than that, I'm really excited to see where they go with the COG system. For those that don't know, the COG system is essentially a 320 FCU. I'm sure there's a lot of differences in there, but to make it simple, you can pull this COG out and it is the serialized component. You can change out the frames, and hopefully in the future we'll see some aftermarket support come along, coming out with different frames, potentially coming out with aluminum frames. But I think Springfield did a really good job right out the gate. And the last thing on this frame is the built-in Magwell. You'll see they do have some chamfering in here and it helps a little bit. We did not butch too many reloads with this, so I think Springfield did a pretty good job. The mag fitment is pretty normal. It's not too tight or anything. And Springfield kind of left the door open for a Magwell on here, which is really nice that they do that. Some manufacturers make it virtually impossible to put an aftermarket Magwell in their gun. We're actually working on a Magwell for this, but the stock one that's built in with these chamfers are gonna be a lot better than a lot of other guns on the market. But it is nice to see that a gun does come with chamfers in here. A little bit of forethought, actually thinking about the reload process. This gun does come with two mags, a 17 round mag and a 20 round mag, which is really nice. And last but not least, we have the HCEC compensator from Herrington Arms. We dropped these today. If you guys want some of these, we have them on the website. This compensator went through a couple renditions. We're really putting a lot of emphasis on reliability. When we design a compensator, that is our main goal, is reliability. Second is recoil reduction. When we start the design phase, we start with a known port size that is usually reliable. Then we work our way down. In the case of the Echelon, we went a little too big. We was having some failures. We stepped it back until we had reliability. We tested all the grains of ammo with this, ranging from 115 grain up to 147 grain ammo from a bunch of different manufacturers. We put a lot of pride in that we are changing the market and the way people view compensators. We do not compromise on reliability. That is at the forefront of our focus. So we went through a couple versions of this trying to get it reliable. We landed on perfection in my opinion. This comp works really well. A lot of times you'll see we have to sacrifice the actual function of the compensator and make it more snappy, reduce less recoil to get it to be reliable. In this case, we really didn't have to do that. We have a very effective compensator that does not sacrifice reliability. We put a lot of rounds on this specific compensator, and there's a lot of things going into recoil with this build. It is a rather heavy build, but this thing is very flat shooting. So one of the factors of this compensator is it's not a micro comp. It is a relatively long compensator. It's actually very similar to our 320 lineup. SIG is known for making a longer barrel to work with different suppressors. Springfield kind of jumped on that bandwagon and made it a little bit longer. So that's why this is a little bit longer of a compensator. You could definitely use this compensator for concealed carry. This thing just shoots really flat, and I think it would make a really good competition setup. I think Springfield is really aiming this to be a duty gun, and throwing the comp on there with this big weapon light, with this optic, it feels like a duty setup. It is a relatively heavy, large setup. So if I had to use this as a home defense gun or a duty gun if I was a police officer, I think it would make a really good setup. This gun has a lot of really good features, and for the price tag of $600, I think Springfield kind of nailed it. This is cheaper than a lot of its competition, and frankly, I think it has a lot more engineering involved. Between the slide cuts, the trigger, the COG system, the sights, the grip texture, all of this comes into play with Springfield putting their best foot forward, and they kind of had to redeem themselves from the XD series, in my opinion. I think this is leaps and bounds above any of their other full-size guns they've offered, and frankly, I think it's really competing against the common 320 and Glock. I really think the Springfield Echelon is a really good middle ground between the SIG P320 and the Glock 17 or the Glock 19. Seems like they took a lot of inspiration from both these guns, both with the SIG FCU system and the lower profile, low bore axis of the Glock. This gun looks very similar to a Glock, which is not a bad thing. This looks like pretty much every black striker-fired gun on the market. As I said already, I think they put a lot more engineering into it, a lot more effort into it than frankly Glock did with the Gen 5. If we can get an integrated setup with a smaller profile and a low bore axis, honestly, this might become my new favorite gun. We'll see how that goes in the future. For now, I think it's just a little bit too long. I definitely don't really want to carry this. We actually did a video of me carrying the P320 for 7 days. It was kind of a long gun. It was a little bit heavy, and you can just see how much longer this Echelon is over the 320. There's a pretty big difference here. So who is the Springfield Echelon for? If you're somebody that likes the low bore axis of the Glock, but you want a little more versatility like the P320, I think the Echelon is going to be it. In the future, I would not be surprised to see some different polymer and aluminum frame options for this gun, some aftermarket triggers, potentially some aftermarket slides. The Echelon did a lot of things right, and right now I think it's a great competition home defense gun. In the future, I think it has the potential to be a really good carry setup. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I would not hesitate at checking this out. Don't forget, we did just release our new compensator for this. If you get one of these and you want to reduce more recoil, check out our comp at herringtonarms.com. Otherwise, if you guys like this video, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.